Thanks very much for that message. But now we have someone who is here in person. Thanks very much, Ian, for joining us today. I know you're busy. It's quite a busy period with the first qualifier tomorrow against Kazakhstan. Ian, of course, is the head of public relations at the Football Association of Wales. One of the men, the people who have brought about change. That's what other people will say about you, Ian, even if you are not going to praise yourself on that, but one of the people who has created fundamental change in the relationship we have between the Welsh language and the world of football. And your role has been completely key in a period where there were other people as well who were completely key and in place. But you know, there's a story, there's an interesting history to this change, isn't there? Of 15 years ago, maybe, to where we've reached today. Yes, thank you very much. I've just left the squad now. We're preparing for the game against Kazakhstan and North Macedonia on Tuesday. We have a press conference with Craig this afternoon, which is always interesting with Craig, hearing what he has to say. But no, it is an interesting journey. In terms of background, I was at the BBC previously as a commentator, commentating on football for about 20 years. I was afforded the opportunity to join the Football Association of Wales, and the whole foundation of it all was, over the years, there are many people here who've experienced, or maybe, well, we've been up and down, never get into finals, not since the World Cup in '58, and then the last 8 in '76 in Europe. But there was support sometimes. Sometimes the support would disappear, but we never felt that there was a direct link between the team and society and the public, whether they supported football or not. And when I was appointed about 12 years ago, the first game I worked on was Bulgaria home. Brian Flynn was manager in the tunnel before the game. There was nothing in Cardiff City Stadium that reflected the fact that Wales were playing. Nothing that reflected how the players would feel in terms of being proud in Welsh or in English, any language. And I think there was an apathy towards the team from the public, apathy from the players towards playing for Wales, maybe. So how could we set about changing that? And fortunately enough, in terms of background, we appointed Gary Speed as manager. I'd known Gary for years, since having commentated so much on him playing. And from speaking to him, he was aware the results weren't going to be enough to change things. We had to be doing more than getting the results. And at the start, the results on the pitch were poor anyway, so it didn't help much. But we started to decide going around Wales and doing Q&A sessions. What makes someone a Welsh person in Newport is different to how someone feels in Porthmadog in North Wales, Wrexham, Aberystwyth, Newtown, Haverfordwest, wherever. But ultimately, we wanted everyone to support the national team. And it was more than just language, it was about identity. The players, everyone had to understand who they were representing, who we are, what we represent, not just now, but historically. So that was part of it. And is a kind of a founding principle. And one of the first things, we'd been in places like Llanelli, Newton and so on, and one of the first things we did was go to the Eisteddfod in Wrexham on the Friday, and there were 25,000 there, not to see Gary, but 25,000 people there, one of the the main ceremonies by the Druid Stones as we walked in, and Gary said, "What's that?" And I said, "Don't worry about it, in the World Cup you'll be the main man, and you'll be the Archdruid." So everyone wanted Gary. Everyone wanted to talk to Gary. And although we weren't successful, we knew we had something here, which was this personal connection with supporters, with the public. And that, I think, is how we laid the foundations for what we've done. And it's continued with Chris Coleman, Ryan Giggs, and now Rob Page and Craig Bellamy. I was on Friday with Craig Bellamy, 150 children in Pwllheli. Craig went back to talk to them and so on. And then an event in Dwyfor Hall, 400 people. The place was full. We did a Q&A 7 till 9:30. It was great that Craig can see how difficult it is to go from Cardiff to Pwllheli and back, and this is how people travel when they come to watch us. It works two ways, really. And in that short video about that event in Pwllheli, the children talk, don't they? And they're so grateful. They refer to things that's like being a dream, that he went all that way from Cardiff or wherever he lives, as they said, and showing their appreciation. And it was important for us to reach the supporters in that age range. Yes, been to Blaenguran in Anglesey, he's been to Cardigan, Llanrwst, Newtown, and then in Pwllheli. Went to Machynlleth on Owain Glyndŵr Day and spoke to children in the local school and so on. He's seen quite a lot of Wales, which is important, and that's one thing he wants to do. If a club wants to raise money on the back of something, as long as the money goes back to the community or local club, as we did in Blaenguran, and there are only 12 community pubs in Wales, so whatever we raised went back into the community, and he loves it. He speaks openly about his life, about the Welsh language, what the opportunities he didn't get when he was younger. His children are now in a special school. What was interesting about Pwllheli, and when you're talking about confidence and language development, we always encourage families to be there. Between 7 and 9:30, there were a lot of children in the audience, and the children were asking questions of Craig in Welsh. They had enough confidence to do so, and they've been doing these for 12 years, and this is the first time ever it's happened. And I would translate for Craig, and he would apologise that he couldn't speak Welsh. And he talked about his background in terms of the language and so on. But the boys, the children who were there, 9, 8, 6 years old, had the confidence in front of 400 people. This is their first language. This was their natural language. And that struck me. This is great. This is how it should be. But you say that those children had the confidence to do it. But maybe what I would argue is that it's not the children who have the confidence to do it, but it's you who've created the circumstances, you and the FAW, but you have created that space, which is a space where children feel confident or safe or okay or natural. You've been able to create that atmosphere for the children to be able to use their first language. Not every context does that, do they? There are many contexts where it goes against maybe what children would naturally do. Having said that, the nature of the club was more like Welsh. Wherever we've been, the nature has been to do things through the medium of Welsh. The only thing in English is the Q&A with Craig, but it's good for Craig to see that the Welsh language isn't something organisational or institutional, it's only used in schools or in an organisation like the FAW or Welsh Government, that he can see it as an everyday language. And going to Caernarfon, the Eisteddfod in Anglesey, and going back for a coffee, my children with me, and getting the shock, they were shocked, hearing natural Welsh spoken. Although they went to Welsh medium schools in Cardiff, it's the same when we go to areas, it's good for them to hear the language, a natural language being spoken every day. I see Tim and Gwilym and so on, Alan and Gwynderfel. I do think 2016 is what changed things. We can't go on about it all the time, but that's what changed people's the image of football in people's minds. People thought previously the only way to enjoy sport and to sell Wales was through rugby. It's not an argument, but football is a bigger sport. Everyone plays football. So if you want to, so we thought we could reach people through football, and we could show people in 2016 there wasn't much interest outside of supporters initially. There weren't expectations. But 2016 changed things and showed people that we can play football. It showed people that you can go and follow Wales and enjoy. And it also showed that you can use your language, your culture, to sell who we are and our history. And that is one of the things. We had a lot of luck along the way. I've been fortunate in my life. I was brought up in Colwyn Bay, went to a Welsh primary school, English medium secondary school, went to Aberystwyth, and I remember in Aberystwyth, I was in Pontycelyn Residential Hall playing football. I remember someone in the football team telling me we were playing away. Wherever we went, people would shout at us in Welsh, and I would translate, "Oh, he just said this about us," and then they'd be shocked that someone speaking Welsh played for the college. And apart from me, they wouldn't know that Welsh was spoken in Aberystwyth, and that was a huge shock. I thought there's something wrong here. What are we going to do? Creating a ghetto like Pontycelyn, or should we be out there and mingling? But that's something that was on my mind all the time. But we've had a lot of luck along the way, and I never felt you could push the language down people's throats. There's a way of doing it, and the way is by selling identity. We've had a lot of support from when Gary Speed was involved. Chris Coleman was fantastic, and Ryan, Rob Page, Craig, they're excellent. But it has to come from the top. And in 2014, a lot of you know this, we had started to get some success. We went to Belgium to play. We had a draw. The month before that, we'd been on a recce, and I told Chris, we're here on the centenary of the start of the First World War. We should do something to commemorate that. And he said, what do you think? I said, well, if it's up to me, I would go to see where Heddwyn was killed and to pay tribute to the Welsh people killed in the First World War and to see Heddwyn's grave and so on. So we went over there, and I told him it was about an hour and a quarter from Brussels. I thought, what do you think? We had an hour and a quarter to do. So good job we hadn't been beaten the evening before because they were a good team. But the morning after the draw, the goalless draw, we went over there, and in one event, this group of boys were a special group of players. They were characters. All these names: Joe Allen, Aaron Ramsey, Chris Gunter, Gareth Bale, Ashley Williams. They weren't just players, but personalities, characters, off the field as well. We don't quite have that at the moment, maybe. But we need to give time maybe for this team to develop. But we went there, and in the period I was there, they were learning about sacrifice, because 100 years later, they would have been there fighting. They were learning about Eisteddfod, they were learning about the Welsh language, and learning about Heddwyn, the poet. And I remember Gareth Bale telling me, my mother's just told me, don't forget to pay your respects to the poet. And that picture of Gareth Bale standing in Real Madrid, best team in the world, and him standing by Heddwyn's grave is a very powerful image, and it brought it all together. And the same thing, we went to Aberfan in 2016, 50 years since the Aberfan disaster where 144 were killed. So we went over there, and it was the same thing. What I told them, when you play for Wales, you're not just, for that particular group, you're not just representing 3 million people, you're representing these boys lying here in Ypres, you're representing these children who were killed in Aberfan, because they're part of who we are, part of our history, and that is why 30,000 come to watch you every time. That's why there's that link, that this strong link with you. And talking about Gary, and I'm talking about the journey, going on here, but with the anthem, for example, you may know, when I've commentated on games in the Millennium Stadium, when you wouldn't hear anything, there's no one there. There was no feeling of belonging when the anthem was sung. The way we got over that in a room of this size in the Vale Hotel, 26 players, staff, with Gary, and Courtney Hamilton, Raymond Ryan, and me. Raymond Ryan came from the Netherlands, had learned the anthem, used to sing it, and he said, if I can sing the anthem and learn it, then you can. Courtney Hamilton, who sang the anthem for us at the time, before games, she came over to speak about her pride, and I gave some kind of history of Wales in referring to the anthem, and then we discussed things, and Gary said, anybody got any issues with this? No one. Empty room, 26 players, and talking about these boys in the early 20s or teens, Joel and Ashley Williams, etc. They got together and sang the anthem. That's how they got over the shyness. So things like that, you plant seeds, and then the whole thing has grown from there. Well, yes, I remember the experience of going to see Wales, yes, in the Millennium Stadium at the time, and it was empty there, wasn't it? And the atmosphere is very different, and the atmosphere is so warm, so close-knit, and so Welsh as well. And the feeling I get when we go to watch Wales at home is that it get more and more Welsh every time, doesn't it? At one time, the anthem would go, the words would go on the ticker, that stopped. There's more singing with Amal Hyd and David Iwan and so on, and it's become more and more Welsh somehow, and that Welshness brings everyone in. People are able to use football to find their own Welshness. Yes, and Prydyn Owen Phillips has been doing the announcements in the stadium in Welsh is first. And talking about the anthem, remember the Belgium game, 1-0 when Gareth Bale scored after 24 minutes. I remember thinking, wow, it's a long time to go here. And then after 70 minutes, the crowd started singing the anthem naturally. I looked up who's put the words up, and no one had put the words up. And the players admitted in the changing rooms afterwards. Players can block things out of their heads so they don't hear things, but on the 70-minute mark, they heard the anthem being sung, and that had raised their levels for the remaining 20 minutes. And you're talking about the mood, and Gwyn looked after. He's betrayed us now and gone over to rugby, but since Gwyn went there, they haven't won a game, but there we are. Oh, one game, sorry. Gwyn has been there for 10, no. But Gwyn, he thought he'd be better in the Welsh Rugby Union than the FA, but Gwyn was in Dinard in Brittany during the Euros in 2016. There was a link with Brittany. And when we went there, we were there with the aim. There are a certain number of recognised official languages in UEFA that are used in conferences, Spanish, English, German, so on. I'd been in a workshop in Paris before the event. I had never been to finals before, so I didn't know what was involved. And I talked to them, if we wanted to use it, we wanted to use it not just to show that we could play football, but to show that Wales is a different country, we have our language and etc. So in official press conferences before the game, when all the managers there, I wanted to put Osian Roberts up to use Welsh. So Chris Coleman would do his stuff, and then Osian. And what happened in Dinard, in the centre, was you had a huge centre. You had the top table, and whoever was on the top table, whether it was Joe Allen, Aaron Ramsey, or Ben Davies, or so on and so on. In the past, what would happen is you would do a press conference in English, and if anyone wanted something in Welsh, they would do it somewhere different. This time, what we did and what we've been doing since 2012, right, Joe Allen is here. Who wants to do it in Welsh? He is then interviewed in Welsh, and everyone knows that the Welsh language is used, and that's where people started to ask, oh, you have a different language, do you? What I used to do, I'd have a bit of fun with it, especially with Osh, and evening before a game, Osh would say, what about Gareth Bale? And I'd say, you've never believe what he said about Gareth Bale. And people would be, wow. And I'd add things. And he would say, I didn't say that. No, I know, but you should have. So, I was pulling things back. So we had a bit of fun doing it, but people would ask about the emblem, chwarae cyd chwarae, on the shirt. And that's where the conversation came when someone asked Gareth, what motivates you to play for Wales? And he said, the dragons on the shirt is all I need. And then we had Chris Coleman when we beat Russia saying, we're a small country tonight, we're a continent. Things happen naturally, but we did that. With the aim, social media was just starting, it was more positive at that time. But we would tweet in English, French, Welsh, Breton. And people said we did more for Breton in 3 weeks than the French government have done in 100 years. But in Russian, Slovakian, whichever team we were playing against, we would make everyone feel part of it. And I have to say, I've never, and if I spoke to a lot of people working in the FAW at the time, I've never felt so comfortable in my Welshness before that, or since then, because everything was just equal. 24 languages, interviews in Welsh, English, whatever. No issues at all. And Chris was behind it. Chris said, Just go there, enjoy it, because we never know when this may happen again. And we went there, and of course we'd prepared. Of course, we wouldn't get to finals of an international competition without preparation, but there was an element of let's enjoy it. Let's enjoy the experience. Let's not take ourselves too seriously. Just be us. And then that paid off. And will that be repeated this summer with the Welsh women's team in Switzerland? The principle is the same. Sometimes, like in Qatar, it didn't work. You have to have success on the pitch to be able to do it, I think. That's where we've been lucky with the women's team now. They have the same kind of feeling that we had in 2016. Their first time, they go in there with Owen Harris, who works with me, who'll be with them during the campaign, and the same principles are in place. They'll follow the same principles, and they're just as enthusiastic, and hopefully it will have the same knock-on effect for them as it did in 2016 for the men, but the principles are all in place. There are 10 of them learning Welsh. They have a full-time Welsh tutor from the Dysgu Cymraeg Learn Welsh project. Lots of staff are learning Welsh, and they have 12 players learning Welsh. So maybe we'll hear more Welsh, but yes, everything will be the same, treating and whatever we do. There are a lot of things that we don't do. I'm not going to sit here and say that we're perfect. There are a lot of things that we could improve at grassroots and so on. There's a huge amount of things. But having said that, don't take it the wrong way, but our main function is not to get people speaking Welsh, but it's to reach finals of international competitions. And then on the back of that, we'll see what we can do and try and influence and plant seeds. People talk about Amawhyd. We didn't do Amawhyd. It was nothing to do with us, because the supporters sang Amawhyd when the players went round the pitch after the games against Belgium and Belarus, and the supporters started singing Amawhyd naturally. So we decided, we sat down in a meeting, should we get everyone in to sing it? If the supporters hadn't been singing Amawhyd, we wouldn't have done it. That's why we're doing it. And in that period, with those 2 games, it was very relevant. And that's the story behind that. But it wasn't us who pushed Amawhyd, because the supporters did it naturally. And at the moment, and I see Tim and Gwyn there, there's nothing the supporters maybe are doing naturally that is on the same level as that. So we're waiting for the supporters to maybe give us the next song, unless someone here is 80 years old, has a song they wrote 40 years ago. But yes, that's the background to that. And at grassroots, we talked about the football clubs, and I've talked about Pwllheli already, and they've done some sort of taken some public step, haven't they, saying we're a Welsh language club, we try and use the Welsh language increasingly, creating a more Welsh atmosphere, reflecting reality, or the language of people in the area and so on. But would that be something you would want to support increasingly in other areas of Wales too? Yes, it would. The only thing I would say is, when we're talking about clubs like Pwllheli, it's the local people who know their areas best. You don't want to go in there and say, that's what you should be doing. It should grow naturally. You should be able to plant a seed and for it to grow naturally, but Pwllheli, Llanrwys, Bentwrog, all these places, it was completely natural. You couldn't say anything about that same about all areas, but what's odd, and I've come off X or Twitter, whatever it's called, because I got fed up. I don't mind, because I worked closely with these managers. I know that they do a lot outside being managers. The ambassadors, Rob Page, for example, going to the Eagles in Llanuwchllyn for an evening with Tom Morris and Gwyneth Glyn to raise funds for a local pub, going to Tryweryn the Eisteddfod, going to Llanystumdwy and so on, to the local school with 25 children. He did that, and the last image was being booed by supporters. Maybe the results, on the back of the result against Slovakia. So the response on social media I don't mind criticism of results, but personal criticism of the manager. He got fed up, obviously, and of course, I don't know what's said now on X, but in the past, what shocked me was 2 clubs who tweeted in Welsh regularly. I don't know what they still do. Were Newport. You would think out of Newport, Wrexham, Swansea, Cardiff, but you wouldn't think that they would be the ones, and Colwyn Bay were the others. You would never think that Colwyn Bay was a Welsh-speaking area, but those were the 2 clubs who regularly tweeted in Welsh. So it makes you think, where are the clubs? Maybe they do, I don't know. But I'm not aware that clubs like Aberystwyth are tweeting in Welsh and so on. So maybe some of the places you would think that they are more Welsh-speaking than others are not doing it. But Newport and Colwyn Bay were 2 clubs that did tweet in Welsh. It's a lot, I'm sure, to do with individuals. Yes, it is. In specific places at a certain time. In 2016, when Gwyn was there, he ran the domestic leagues, and I was with the national teams. Now the FAW has done all sorts of things outside of football, but that's what we were mainly responsible for then. We had a deputy manager called Osian Roberts. We had Trevor Davies as president, and we had about 6 or 7 players speaking Welsh. So hearing Welsh and using Welsh was a completely natural thing. Now we got into this next game with Ben Davies and Joe Allen as the only 2 Welsh speakers. And there are injuries and whatever reasons, meaning that others aren't in the squad. And Ben Davies, of course, did the press conference for the World Cup. Yes. People did a lot more of that than we did, because I knew it was the most natural thing, because he was going to do it at some point, and Joe Allen was going to do it at some point, and clearly they both do it bilingually, so that Welsh language is going to be heard at some point. And it was heard. When it was heard, it was a story for it to be heard for the first time in a press conference of the World Cup finals. We'll close on the theme of the World Cup, maybe moving further from language and more towards football. Right, you're with the squad at the moment in the camp. How's it going to go tomorrow night? We have a meeting every morning at 8:30. And for some reason, it moved to 8:45 today. That's why I was a little late arriving, and it's Craig who leads it. And I said, listen, I'm disappearing for a couple of hours because I'm doing this conference with Basque Country, Catalonia. And he said, if you can develop links, see if you can grab a couple of players who maybe have a Welsh background. So if anyone knows of anyone, that would help me very much when I go back into camp, saying I found someone from Barcelona who can maybe play for Wales. Well, we've had these international relations for decades, haven't we? So there must be someone now who's been born who can play football. If someone does know of anyone, you don't get the opportunity in the Basque Country, Catalonia. They don't get the opportunity. Maybe they should. We did play against the Basque Country. I remember that. Very good team. How are things going? Well, it's odd. When the draw came out in December, where was it? Geneva. We went up there. And people thought at the time, this is quite a good draw. But then the closer the game comes, people think, oh, we don't have Ethan Ampadu, we don't have Aaron, certain players we don't have, and they think, what he calls a banana skin football team, Kazakhstan and North Macedonia. They're confident, and the way Craig is in terms of preparation, will never not win a game because of lack of preparation. The way Craig prepares, I've never seen anyone like him. And we went in on Sunday. In the past, he could have been in on Sunday. Maybe, hello, how is everyone? No, straight in. And the expectations are there from everyone, whether it's press or commercial, training, catering, whatever. The expectations are right at the top level. And there's no second. First thing in the morning and right until late in the evening, Craig makes sure everyone is on it. I'm quite confident that we will win tomorrow and then take the next step, the next game, one step at a time. Thanks very much for coming to us. We really do appreciate it. And we appreciate all of the work that you've done, Ian, and being in the right place at the right time with the vision and planting those seeds all over the place. Very best wishes, and thank you very much. Not this evening, tomorrow. Best wishes for tomorrow. And also good luck to the ladies team this summer. Lots of us going over to support and looking forward to that. Excellent. Thank you very much, Ian. You can disappear now whenever you want.